Okay, now to explain exactly how you actually make your own spirals. To start, I made this flat land just for a base to play with to show this tutorial. And I will say that all this stuff I'm going to be showing is kind of the more advanced parts of the Worldedit mod, so if you haven't played with it before and don't really know much about it, you should go check out the help pages and stuff like that, because I'm not going to be going into detail explaining all the different commands and stuff I use. I will list all the different ones in the description though, so people can have like a reference to go off of. Okay, to start, I'm just going to spawn a few things. Stick, feather, some stone, and the Worldedit brush, or not brush, the tool. I'm just gonna move a few of these around. Okay, so we want to start by making a base, one base block, and we go to our stick and we create a cylinder brush, and we're just going to do 1 to 1. That's what I use for the default normally, and we're going to change the size to 3. Click right there in the center, and we have the very bottom. Now what I'm going to do here is stack a couple different size cylinders up to create the core of what the spiral is going to be. So we put another block down, change our cylinder size to 4, and then we have another one on top of it. Let's go back, whoops, change it back down to 3, and this is going to be our main segment that's going to be spiraling around, and it'll look a lot different when it actually when you actually put it in the spiral. So now that we have that, we need to make a selection of it with the Worldedit tool. Check if my instant mine is off. And by the way, I'm going to be using a lot of keybinds, or not a lot, but a few keybinds in this that I have set up for single player commands, so I'll try and explain the exact ones I'm doing, but I have like an instant mine one here. I just toggled it on and off. It kind of helps for a lot of the different things I do. So make sure that's off, and we have everything selected. Then I'm going to turn it back on and get those blocks out of there. So now that we have that all selected, you need to come back about this far. I'm not sure how far that is, maybe 30-40 blocks or so. Make sure you come back this far and then use the copy command. It's really important that you give yourself some space there. So once that's done, I'm just going to clear that selection out, and we go and we set up what is going to be our main base for the spiraling section. Start with another block there, and then we're going to use the same cylinder tool and just change the size. We're going to go to, actually let's change that to 12. So now we have a big cylinder base. And this is actually going to be, the outside of this is where it is going to be the pattern that the core follows around. And it's going to spiral around, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. So now that we have that all done, we need to do the same thing and select it with our Worldedit tool. I'm just laying out some base blocks here. Whoops, got that one off a little bit. Okay. Let's just select that. That looks good. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention before, I am actually using a Worldedit GUI mod too. That's why this is all showing up like this. I really recommend downloading it because it's really helpful in knowing exactly where your selection's at, as it can get a little confusing if you're moving stuff around or shifting, and if you have no idea or if it doesn't show up. So, oops, I'm gonna get rid of these blocks. and we're going to stack that about 60 up. It's better to go a little long than too short. And we're going to clear the selection again. So, now that that's done, what we need to do is actually set up a pattern that the core is going to follow around that we can copy. So, starting down here, we use our feather. We're going to take that and turn it into a replace brush. 35 for wool, and red just to make it easy to see. And we start right there. Excuse me. And now what we're going to do is just mark a line that slowly works its way up all the way around till we have it all the way back to the starting point. And the depending on how many over by how many up you go is going to be how tightly coiled the whole spiral ends up being. So the more over you go for up will mean tightly coiled, but if you only go, let's back that up, undo that. Like if you would go like this, it would be a very open, stretched out coil, as opposed to, I went too far, as opposed to something like this. It would be a lot tighter in the coiling. So I mean, you can, that's actually just, you can do it whatever way you want, it doesn't really matter. Actually 3 would probably work out pretty good, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep going 3. So what you do is count 3, and you go up, count another 3, go up, count another 3, go up, count another 3, and you just do that, oops, all the way around. Shouldn't take too long, really. Go up this side. And yeah, like I said, this is actually going to be the pattern that you're going to use to copy the whole segment around. Accidentally missed that one. So, oh, I screwed that one up too. 2, 3. So I think we made it. Yep, I think that's, yeah, so that's the whole spiral. And that's just to complete one section of it. If you want to like have it continuously wrapping around, then I mean you can keep going, but what I normally do is I just get one segment of it, and then I will create the one segment, and I will go into a program like MC Edit or something and just copy and paste it on top of each other, stack it that way, just because I think it's a lot easier to do that in MC Edit than it is in inside the game with the Worldedit mod. But that's just my opinion. So once we have that all laid out, we're going to go first. This is very important. You need to change the setting, hit toggle place. Now what that means is it's going to be placing your paste selection at the first point of the axe tool, instead of normally how it would do it is where you would stand. So instead of having to like dig all this out and make it so you stand on each one, which is actually one of the very first time I tried creating this, I didn't think about that toggle place, and I actually tried to do that, mine all that out and stand on each one. It was a huge pain. So once I figured out the toggle place, it made it a lot easier. But once you have the toggle place on, you just need to go to and check my instant mines off, and you click the first one right there, and I just did that one to make the selection shorter. So your first one, you hit it there, and we can come out here and type in paste -A. Now what that's done is pasted your selection over there according to that point based on our copy point, which is, well, right around here somewhere. So I just shifted it over. So what we need to do now is just keep doing that along this whole line. So let's go to the next point, click it with our tool, paste, -A. And what the -A does is it means to not copy the error blocks. Because when we made that copy, there was all these error sections. If you don't put that in there, it'll paste the error in there, which will interfere with your previous pastes. So, yeah, if you don't do that, it kind of screws it up. I can actually show you if I do it on these next couple ones. If I just put it in normal instead of with the -A, and we go over and look, see how it's done this kind of weird stuff here? That's what you don't want. Just gonna undo those and change it to daytime. So let's go ahead and do those the right way. Paste -A. And what I have actually done for this is set up a keybind, so I can just click, press one key, and it automatically pastes it and clears my selection. So I can just keep doing that instead of having to type it out for each one, which saves an enormous amount of time. So you just need to go around then, click each one, and hit your keybind, and let's see what we got so far. So that's like the very beginning of how it's going to start spiraling. Just the first little quarter or so. So, oops, I don't think I did that one. And you can keep doing it on the same one over and over just to make sure, in case you miss one or something, it doesn't screw anything up. Let's continue on. And I really should have set this up so it didn't output the code to the screen, because it just makes it way too busy. And this is what we have so far. About halfway through the section. And as you can see, it's just going to keep on following that line. Just continue on following your little pattern you created. Like I said before, you should definitely have some sort of way of creating a macro or something to make this a little bit faster. An alias or something in the SinglePlayerCommands mod. You can set up all sorts of macros and keybinds, which help enormously. Okay, so we're almost done. And that should be our completed spiral section. And that's how it looks. And you can actually come back here and see that the red pattern matches up pretty much exactly with how our spiral is. See how that section right there? Both sides. And like I said before, you can create really any base you want to start with, and really any size, the width of it, and then any amount of however you want it to be coiled. If you want it really tight or stretched out, this is a little bit more stretched out, I think, that it needs to be. I could have probably had it coil a little bit tighter. I think it would have looked better. I think this is actually the same one I did with the snake same amount of spiraling. And what I did for that was just copy the section. I think I just flipped it and attached it to there, so it did the spiraling back around to come over here then. So it almost looked like a perfect figure eight, and actually if you look at this from above, you can see it's pretty much a perfect circle, because it follows our perfect outline here, and that's how the whole thing works. If you have an outline to follow, and you know it's going to be, if you use that little pattern, you know it has to follow it. And you can actually use that for, I'm sure, lots of other things, just by creating any different types of, I don't know, walkways or just parts of a structure. It wouldn't necessarily have to be in a spiral. You could just create a line or some sort of 3D line in the air, and if you just go along with your tool and paste it at each location with a core that you've copied, then you will have a 3D version of your pattern. So, hope you guys like this tutorial, and like I said, I'm going to be putting a whole bunch of links in the description for different things, probably for my snake projects and for maybe the world save for this, and yeah, so don't forget to upvote, comment, and subscribe.